A story about a lady trapped in her own darkness emerges from the shadows. In a world consumed by darkness, one name stands out among the shadows: Katherine Knight. This is Australia's first female cannibal murderer to be found guilty of her crimes. John Price, her partner, was murdered and his body chopped. She was found guilty of both charges. Because of the extreme brutality of her actions, she's earned the nickname Cannibal Killer. Let's explore the complexity of human nature and the interplay of several forces that make it hard to figure out the driving force behind such heinous acts. From where this all started. This horrific tale takes place in the Upper Hunter Valley of New South Wales, Australia, a region known for its coal mining and cattle industry. Jack Rowan was the manager of the abattoir in the 1940s. He was married to Barbara, and they had 4 boys. However, the town was rocked by scandal when Barbara left Ken Knight, another abattoir worker, for another man. Barbara and Ken went on to have 4 additional children, one of whom was Katherine Mary Knight, who was born on October 24, 1955, in Tamworth Hospital, alongside her twin sister Joy. The Knights were a nomadic family that were constantly on the move due to the nature of their profession in slaughterhouses. They had a really tough upbringing full of violence and abuse. Katherine and Joy were sisters who shared a special affinity, although Katherine had difficulty making friends and lacked confidence. She frequently snapped at Joy due to her short temper. She had a difficult childhood and was abused by her parents. As an adult, she struggled with mental health problems and had a history of violence. She got her start in the business working in the offal room, or the slaughterhouse. Katherine found her calling as an adult when she began working as a boner. She was so skilled at her job that she eventually reached the point where she could bone 600 animals each day and kill 600 animals per day. She was later promoted and given her own set of butcher knives, which she would hang up above her bed wherever she lived, in case she needed them. First comes love, then comes attempted murder. Before the mother of 4 moved in with the man who would later become her murder victim, John Price, in 1995, she had a run of relationships that all shared one thing in common: her history of violent violence. Knight met David Kellett, a wild drinker with an addiction for fistfights, while they were both working at the butcher shop. She managed to persuade him to marry her in 1974. He was drunk the whole time, and her mom warned him that she could get very angry. Her mom told him that Knight had a screw loose somewhere. However, he quickly learned that Knight's fists could cause more than just little damage. He soon found himself under her control. On their wedding night, Knight and Kellett had 3 sexual encounters. Knight, dissatisfied with her new husband's tiredness, began to strangle him when he fell asleep during the 4th round. Kellett awoke and successfully defeated Knight. Even though she tried to kill him on their first day of marriage, they stayed together for another 10 years. However, there were several problems in the marriage. Kellett cheated on his wife frequently and once abandoned his 2 girls and her in the middle of the night. After learning of one of Kellett's extramarital affairs, Knight threatened numerous individuals with a stolen axe and left their 2-month-old child on the local train lines moments before a train was scheduled to arrive. The train never arrived, and the baby was spared. Her postpartum depression diagnosis came after onlookers watched her pushing and swinging her 2nd child in a stroller with great force down a busy street. In a psychiatric institution, she told medics she wanted to kill a mechanic who fixed Kellett's car since it allowed him to leave her. After Knight's hospital release, Kellett took her back. The reunion did not last long. After Kellett left, Knight was devastated. Katherine Knight's string of toxic relationships. After Katherine Knight and Kellett broke up in 1986, she immediately began dating David Saunders, a local miner. Saunders moved in with her and her 2 girls after only a few months. But he kept his apartment, and Knight developed serious jealousy and suspicion about his activities while she wasn't around. Just like her other relationships, this one turned aggressive and nasty very quickly. They stuck it out anyhow, and a year later, they had a baby girl. After Knight tried to murder Saunders with scissors, he left her shortly after the delivery. Eventually, she hooked up with John Chillingworth. They were together for 3 years, during which time they had Eric, Knight's first son. However, after Chillingworth found out that Knight was having an affair with a man named John Charles Thomas Price, the two broke up peacefully. She once showed him her true colors by slitting the throat of his 2-month-old dingo dog. The brutal slaying of John Price. In the beginning of their relationship, Katherine Knight and John Price had no problems. He had enough money as a miner to provide comfort for Knight and his 2 older children, who also lived with him and seemed to like her. In 1995, after a year of dating, they decided to move in together. But when she proposed marriage and he turned her down, she became aggressive. Knight falsely accused Price of stealing from the corporation, which led to Price's dismissal. Although he had cast her out at first, they resumed their relationship after some time had passed. But he wouldn't let her back in this time. According to the people who lived nearby, Knight's aggression only got worse from that point on. Katherine Knight attempted to stab John Charles Thomas Price in the chest in February of 2000 after the two got into an argument. To ensure the safety of his kids, he obtained a restraining order against her. Price expressed some fear for his safety at the end of the month, telling his co-workers that he believed Knight was responsible for his death if he were to ever disappear. He had reason to be concerned. Murder, mutilation, and a macabre dinner menu. John Charles Thomas Price returned home from work on February 29, 2000, and per usual, he chatted with his neighbors for a while before turning in at 11 o'clock that night. Shortly afterwards, Knight returned home, prepared dinner, watched television, showered, and descended to her bedroom. In order to have sex with Price, she woke him up. Katherine Knight then grabbed a butcher knife she kept under her mattress and stabbed Price 37 times. He reportedly awoke while she was attacking, but was helpless to stop her. When he finally passed from his injuries, Knight took his body downstairs, skinned him, and hung him up on a meat hook in the living room. After beheading him, she cooked his body parts with potatoes, pumpkins, beets, zucchini, cabbage, squash, and gravy. She then prepared a lunch for herself, though evidence at the scene of the crime suggests she was unable to eat it. She took numerous pills, collapsed close to Price's dismembered body, and was later found dead. When Price didn't show up for work the following morning, his co-workers listened to his warning and contacted the authorities. When police came, they discovered Katherine Knight's bloody crime scene and arrested her unconscious body. She claimed to wake up with no recollection of the previous night. The police discovered Price's head in the kitchen, where it had been cooking in a pot of vegetables. 2 plates with names on them were on the table. Knight's horrifying idea to use John Price's remains as a meal for his kids has the cops reeling. Katherine Knight, never to be released. Katherine Knight was swiftly accused of killing John Charles Thomas Price, even though she said she couldn't remember what happened the night he was killed. The proceedings in her trial, which began in October 2001, did not progress very far. Even though the judge had not heard any evidence, Knight altered her plea to guilty. That day, she was taken away to serve out her sentence behind bars, and the court had her file stamped never to be released. A woman in Australia has received a life sentence without the possibility of parole for the first time in the country's history. Even now, years after the fact, Knight insists she's innocent and won't take responsibility for her behavior. Katherine Knight has previously attempted to appeal her sentence, but her request was refused nearly immediately. She continues to do time at Silverwater Women's Correctional Center, where she was originally sentenced to life. Have you heard about the different theories regarding what drove Knight to commit murder? Did you know that some experts think she might have been struggling with a mental illness like schizophrenia or borderline personality disorder? Some people think that she did it out of revenge because Price had just gotten a restraining order against her. Some people think that she was just a cruel murderer who got pleasure from causing others pain and agony. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. Thanks for watching. Check the other videos on the screen.